روحوا ساودا عمت كم زتريوه ناود عمت This is the first time for me to go live on YouTube. I am live to talk about what is taking place in Sudan. First, to all the Eritrean and Ethiopian community, happy Easter. Ruhus Afasiga. Nkwana Darrasan. Happy Easter. I think what is happening in Sudan is one of the most significant developments in our region. We need to pay attention to what is taking place because it's extremely crucial. Sudan is right now the glue because it sits between Egypt on the Red Sea, bordering South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. And if Sudan were to fall on the hands of the enemies of Eritrea, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, then we would have tremendous problems in the region. We'll never be able to develop. In other words, it becomes like what is taking place in Syria. So it is extremely crucial to pay attention to what's going on there because it's going to determine the future of the region. But one thing for sure, that we are in a much better position to deal with it than we have in the past. The reason being is Eritrea and Ethiopia, their militaries are aligned and working together. Eritrea is strong. And I think the Ethiopian military is regaining its footage, and it has overcome the war that Sudan started using al-Shafga. And at that time, this is when the war with the TPLF 2020 started. Al-Burhan decided to side with the TPLF, thinking that the TPLF was going to win, and attacked Ethiopia. Attacking Ethiopia also means attacking Eritrea because the TPLF was the enemy of Eritrea and Ethiopia. And so working with the TPLF also meant that Al-Burhan was indirectly working with the United States. And we know that he was working with the United States because Senator Kuntz went there. The United Nations was going there. A lot of the things that the TPLF got before the war was coming directly through Sudan. And if you remember the, what do you call the TPLF, when they fled to Sudan, these are the people that committed the Maikadra genocide. When they went to Sudan, they were being trained in Sudan. So Sudan was playing a direct hand during the war, starting in 2020. That also means that Sudan was getting, Al-Burhan was getting support from Egypt, Ethiopia's nemesis, and the United States, and that were supporting the TPLF. So After the TPLF got defeated, Al-Burhan didn't have any place to go, and he started mending his relationship with Ethiopia. But I think that was too far gone. I don't think the Ethiopian government wanted to work with him anymore. So, in the backdrop, on the background, Hamiti or Hamdan Dagolo has been coming up, playing big power politics. Recently, just about a week ago, the Abyei, which is between Sudan and South Sudan, the richest area in the region where the oil flows from, Hamiti, Dogolo, and South Sudanese signed an agreement that they are going to do this amicably, because for a long time, when the Sudan and South Sudan divided, the West, led by the United States, deliberately just left the central location where all the resources are undefined, meaning it didn't belong to Sudan, it didn't belong to South Sudan, it was undisputed, and peacekeeping forces were immersed. The peacekeeping forces at that time were TPLF's forces that were making billions of dollars for years. And this is a disputed area. Hamiti, who is fighting against Burhan right now, went to Russia, visited Russia, has been working with the Emirates. He's also visited Ethiopia, probably a month ago, and he was also in Eritrea. So what that means to me is it is more likely than not Eritrea and Ethiopia will back Hamiti in order to ensure the stability of Sudan. That is what I think when it comes to what it means, what the Sudanese conflict means to Eritrea and Ethiopia. For Eritrea and Ethiopia, a stable Sudan would mean Eritrea, Ethiopia, South Sudan, a huge chunk of the Horn of Africa region would be completely independent from any outside, especially Western influence. And that is really a major development in the history of the world. One. Point number two, the bigger geopolitical play, which is the competition between China, Russia, on one side, and the United States on the other, and the European allies. And so, what does that mean? Russia wants to establish a base, and they have agreed to allow Russia to have a base there. And would the United States want that? No. The other thing is Egypt's role. Egypt wants to see or wants to control what is happening in Ethiopia all the time. They want to have a say of what's going on. Any president, any leader that comes to Egypt, in Egypt, they are going to try to find a way to interfere in Ethiopia's affairs. This has been going on for a long time, talking about hundreds of years. The Egyptians' number one agenda is to control the Nile. So what happens in Ethiopia is extremely important. So what this means is that the Egyptians are likely to align with the US and its Western interests because they want to see, or they want to have an opportunity to have a say, whether it's directly or indirectly, on what's going on in Ethiopia. So that is Egypt's take, but the other aspect of it is you have Eritrea aligned with Russia today more than the United States. Sudan heading in that direction. And Saudi Arabia, which is critical, is more getting away from the United States influence. What that means is the Red Sea, the longest coast of the Red Sea is controlled by Saudi Arabia. The next longest is controlled by Eritrea. So that means if Eritrea and Saudi Arabia are seen eye to eye, President Isaias was in Saudi Arabia about a couple of months ago, and I think Sudan was weighing in extremely heavily on their agenda, because without stable Sudan, stable Yemen, stable Eritrea, Saudi Arabia's agenda of growth, which is Vision 2030, Vision 2060, it is a very comprehensive agenda. It's not going to be able to work. So stability in Eritrea, stability in Sudan, and Egypt's cooperation with Saudi Arabia is going to be critical for the growth, for the transformation of Saudi Arabia. So what that means is the developments in Sudan, the competition in Sudan is a zero-sum game. Either Burhan or Hamiti must win. And my take is you cannot bet against Eritrea. And now South Sudan and Ethiopia are. Eritrea was, I think, in South Sudan just a few days ago. Minister Usman and Ato Imani Gabrab were in South Sudan a few days ago. Abiy Ahmed was also in South Sudan a few days ago. And so you have all these developments taking place, and it's not by accident. So what I think is going to happen is that we're going to see a change in Sudan. The change that we see hopefully favors the people of Ethiopia and Eritrea, because what that would mean is that would mean a stability, a changed region for a long time to come. This is also extremely important generational, transformational moment in the history of the region. Why would I say that? Because if you know your history, up until now, the influence of the West has never left Africa. For the first time in the history of our region, after Eritrea became independent, what happened? Since the fall of the TPLF, the people of Ethiopia are fully behind Eritrea. The influence of the United States in Ethiopia is minimized. So what is happening is the role of the West in the Horn of Africa is being overtaken by the region's people led by Eritrea. So, and the countries in the Horn of Africa and Eastern African countries want that transformation. Why? It is not by accident that Minister Usman of Eritrea, Ato Yamana Gabrab, went to Kenya just days ago, maybe 4 or 5 days ago, and met with the president of Kenya, William Ruto. And probably about a couple of months ago, President Isaias was in Kenya. And before President William Ruto came to the United States for the US-Africa Leaders Summit about 4 months ago in December, he went to Eritrea, met with President Isaias. And the information, the explanation that Kenya gave to the world about its relations with Eritrea is that Eritrea is a critical player and we must fully engage with Eritrea because Eritrea is essential. It is critical to the regeneration, the growth, the development, the economic development, the renaissance of Kenya. Kenya is bordered by Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, and it's also a gateway to many landlocked African countries. It is the only way that these countries get their resources. So any instability in the borders of Ethiopia and Kenya will carry through to Kenya and make it extremely difficult for Kenya to develop. So for the first time, Kenya sees the importance of Eritrea and the role that it could play, the role that Eritrea could play in securing the future of Ethiopia. For that reason, they want to make sure that they work with Eritrea, align all their interests. Eritrea's return to IGAD becomes extremely important. The regional outlook of the region becomes important. The cohesive approach of the region when it deals with the international community, when it deals with the geopolitical developments at play, becomes extremely important that they play their hands correctly. So what is happening in Sudan is a reflection of a much bigger power play, and we are not bystanders in this. We are playing a heavy hand. My apologies for coming out in Easter to talk about this, but I figured I give you my 2 cents to make sure that at least we have a perspective, because it's kind of very difficult to understand what is going on in Sudan and what it means. And a lot of people are saying like, oh, this is what Africans do all the time, but it's not happening in vacuum. It's part of a much bigger political geopolitical play that's taking place. So hopefully this was helpful, informative. It is my take. It's my information. It's what I believe based on what I have been following. And for more of this, make sure to subscribe to nafasitpost.com newsletter. Free subscription. I just started the newsletter. It is part of a much bigger agenda that I am trying to accomplish, which is create a media platform that really serves the interest of the Horn of Africa people. And so make sure to support. If you have businesses, sponsor. That we can do more. This is the time for us to go on the offensive, to be able to forward our narratives. And that's all I got to say. And you have a happy Easter. Enjoy. You take care.